Thank you everyone for attending. Happy Pride Month. Nonotuck is hosting our second annual Pride panel. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee is committed to providing brave spaces for people to come together, discuss, learn, obtain information, and respect perspectives from all people. Today, we have a couple of panelists that are doing great work in the community to raise awareness for the LGBTQAI plus community. So the Stonewall riots were a series of violent demonstrations against the raid that had took place in June 1969 in Greenwich Village. Although this was not the first incident when homosexual community fought back against persecution, it became the defining event that sparked the gay rights movement in the United States and around the world. In 1970, Pride and protest marches were held in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco, around the anniversary of Stonewall. So today we have panelists who are organizers of Pride Parade around Massachusetts today. So thank you, Kerry and David. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having us. It's great to be a part of this conversation, and happy Pride to everybody.
Yeah, happy Pride, everyone. Doing great today and looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Thank you. We are too, because, we really pride ourselves on getting information and just having a space where people are able to learn and have these open discussions. So we thank you on behalf of Nonotuck's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. So either one, whoever wants to go first, don't fight each other. Why don't you tell me about your organization and how and why it started?
David, please.
Okay. So my name is David Connor. I'm located in central Massachusetts, Worcester. And there's a long history of Pride in Worcester, actually. It started here in 1975. It was the first Pride that they ever had. So it's celebrating 50 years. It's coming up on a 50-year anniversary, but it actually has been up and down in terms of like participation and actually having it every year. But I became involved with Pride through my previous position at the Worcester Historical Museum. And I was the project manager for this queer history project called LGBTQ plus Worcester for the Record. And what we did was it was a 2-year research project where we worked with the local colleges to document and chronicle the lives of LGBTQ people in Worcester. And we dated some of the history back to the first Pride. And we learned that Worcester had its first Pride in 1975. And Worcester being sort of a conservative city by nature, which I think it's changing a little bit. There was a huge resistance to the first Pride that happened. This was 5 years after Stonewall that you just mentioned. And a little local group called the MCC, the Metropolitan Community Church, decided to start a Pride. They were sort of a progressive queer spiritual group, faith group, and they put together the first Pride, and there was a lot of resistance. But one of the beautiful stories is that Providence Pride, hearing that Worcester Pride was putting together their first Pride and that they were getting backlash and they were getting a lot of hate and violence, spewed towards them, sent a bus full of people over to march with them. So it ended up being, there's like this really beautiful photo from the 1975 parade of people marching down the street. And it was pretty violent. I think they were received with like people throwing rocks at them and calling them names and all this stuff. But Worcester Pride has been, up and down over the years. But for the last 4 years, we, as an organizing committee, have been really focused on, representing the entire spectrum of queer people. And we were talking earlier, and there's been a lot of conversation on race and queerness and how that intersects. And so Worcester Pride has really focused a lot on that, and you can see it through like the changes that have happened. But there's a lot of history there. I won't go on a rant about it because there's just like a lot to say. But I just hope that people can come and see what we do now, because we've put ourselves on the map, and it's just like a huge celebration, and people are, the business community, the faith community, have really been participating on a level that we've never seen before.
Do you think that the intersect is what created the consistency within the last 4 years for Worcester
I would
Pride?
say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened was, there was Michael Brown, there was George Floyd. There were these incidents that really set the city on fire. Worcester is a very political place. I would say there's a lot of history of abolition here. So people, within the institution started talking and trying to change things. And then on a cultural level, on a state level, Massachusetts Cultural Council has really changed the way in which they fund things. And they look at like what you're doing strategically and on an organizing level. And so Pride was no exception to that. And what happened was there was a former committee of just older men who I would say, in my experience, and this is just said with a lot of sensitivity and delicacy, that they had their own traumas around being gay in Worcester, and what that they had their experiences that really prevented them from seeing a bigger picture, I would say. And so those conversations happen within the community, and ultimately the whole committee stepped back. This also happened across the country. Worcester was not the only city that this happened in. This was happening across the United States. It happened in Boston. But what was really interesting for Worcester is that we were able to turn it around a little bit quicker because people stepped in and started to really organize. It was led by a group of women of color called Shades. And so they started the community conversations, and then it led to a huge change in the dynamic of who was in charge, how they were organizing it, who was prioritized, all these different things. So it really has shifted the culture of Pride and of the city, and it's been a catalyst for like a lot of positive change in the city.
That's awesome. Thank you, David. Kerry.
Yeah, so my name is Kerry Zeida. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the executive marketing director for an organization called the South Coast LGBTQ+ Network. We're based in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and we've been expanding into all the other counties and districts in what we call South Coast, which is Fall River and Taunton and Attleboro and all these boroughs down in this coastal town where I live. And our organization was founded 10 years ago, largely in response to an attack on the gay community back in 2006. It was a gay bar called Puzzles. And some guy came in with a hatchet and a gun and started shooting the place up after he found out it was a gay bar. And it drew a lot of international attention to our area because the level of violence was so elevated. And the mayor at the time, Scott Lang, called on all the individuals and organizations that were supporting LGBTQ+ rights to band together and concentrate our efforts and coordinate our efforts to help make sure that something like that wouldn't happen again. So our organization ended up becoming this umbrella for all the activity that was being done here. And, for the past 10 years, we've been building programs and services, professional services, events, all kinds of outreach to the community. And of course, it culminates like it does for David every year in Pride. Ours takes place in June. We just had the event in Buttonwood Park in New Bedford on the 1st. And then last weekend, we had another event in Taunton, and the turnout was the best it's ever been. There was so much energy, so much excitement, so much support from people like Nonotuck who exhibited at our events, and it was really affirming for people like me who didn't spend or hasn't spent his whole life in the nonprofit world, in community activism. My background is in marketing technology. Technology marketing, I should say, for companies like Microsoft. So, at this point in my career, in my life, I've decided to, dedicate my work to giving back to the LGBTQ+ community, and it's been really very, very gratifying for me.
Yeah, wow. That sounds great. So when you guys have these events, what do you say to people who or what would you tell people who have a problem with children attending these events, right? Because they may say children are too young, or why are we discussing sexuality with children? So what's some information you would give people or would want people to know about these events that you hold in regards to children attending?
I mean, I'll just say this is a critical question, because obviously you are forming your opinions and your worldview when you are younger. You take what you learn when you are younger with you into adulthood and carry it with you the rest of your life. And so for us, it's important that that kids feel supported at the end of the day. No matter where they are in their journey of self-discovery. And it's important that they have parents, guardians, mentors who can help them learn about the world around them in an appropriate way. We've faced this problem a number of times. Just a year ago, January, we had a drag queen story hour in Taunton that was stormed by a bunch of Nazis who represented this group called NSC 131, and it was extremely uncomfortable. There was nothing going on there other than a drag queen reading stories from a children's book. And our view on this is that parents and guardians can help kids make decisions about what they see, what they consume, the type of medical care they get, and that everybody should feel welcome. A lot of the resistance we get is based on fear, based on lack of understanding and knowledge. And we think it's really important that facts get out there, so that we can kind of counter what we see as a really big wave of misinformation, disinformation, and in a lot of cases, just lies about what our community represents.
Thank you.
And I
David,
would
did
agree.
you want to add?
Yeah, I just agree with everything you say in terms of the response and the resistance that we face. Because to your question, um, there's a conflation of sexuality or sexualization onto the community, when ultimately Pride itself is really just about community. There's not really a sexual element to it. But that NCS 131 group that you mentioned, so they're a threat to Worcester Pride as well. And we've always had to be prepared for them to show up at any of our events, because we know that Pride is on their radar. So we have to, when we organize a Pride, a lot of people don't understand what goes behind the scenes. You have to take a lot of extra security measures for people like this, because they are dangerous and they could, be harmful to you. So I think that this is something that's always going to take place, unfortunately, that we have to deal with. I recently attended a conference at Sutton High School. I don't know if people on here have read about what happened. But so as a Pride organizer, I am responsible for this big pageant that happens every year. It's a community pageant, and it's a pageant that showcases diversity within the queer community. And the winner of our pageant attended the conference with me, and this is a conference at Sutton High School. It's an opt-in conference. It's a DEI conference. And these are students who care about these issues. They're the ones who attend. So it's 600 students from across the state. I brought a drag queen to talk about drag, to talk about community, to talk about Pride, to talk about history. We talked about the history of Pride, and the backlash that we got was insane. I think because of this political moment that we're in, things were really exacerbated, and then it became threatening towards the teachers who were involved, the principal, us at Pride, and the drag queen. So it really got out of hand, and it was a stark reminder for the people who are involved in our community that this is a constant threat, because ultimately the workshop was so beautiful and well attended, and it was just like full of love, and there was some great conversations that were happening about growing up and wanting to be, or knowing that you're LGBTQ, or not knowing and finding community. And if you happen to be abandoned by your family, where can you find community? So I guess like one of my main points, and this is just like an individual thing that I'm not speaking on Pride or anyone at the table, but I think the conversation needs to really be about, it needs to be more geared towards heterosexual people and their reaction and their response to queer people, because oftentimes you're sort of trapped in a situation because, okay, so first you're abandoned by your family. Okay, great. Then you find community. All right, you find community. And then when you're in the community, then you get this type of backlash. So you really can't win. So you turn to your community and then you join the community and the community supports you in the event of this conference, for example. And then you get this. So it's almost
Right.
like a lose-lose situation. But the beautiful thing is that, to Kerry's point, I'm really sorry that happened to you guys there. That sounds horrific. And it's just a constant reminder to like all the stuff that we have to deal with. But you know, your community will support you. They will be there. They understand that the perceptions are not real. And it is very sad that we are sexualized when we're just really trying to put on community work. And it's kind of an insane thing to deal with because you are sexualized by them and then you have to then defend that.
Right.
You know, so it's like, this is actually more of a you issue, but
Yep.
yeah.
That's a great way that's a great way to put it, David.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on all the things we can do, you know, there has to be some accountability on the other side to want to learn and adapt and accept. I mean, even if you don't believe in it's important not to want to shut down the other side, which is what we're getting, is everyone is entitled to their opinion. And we completely respect that, but it's when it crosses the line into you aren't entitled to your opinion that things really get ugly.
Yeah, I agree with what you both are saying. And that's just from like a racial standpoint, right? Because we go, okay, racial issues, that's more of a non-colored person's issue more than it is our issue, and they have to learn and want to learn and understand. So that totally makes sense. So in your coming out process, you know, what did you guys experience, or what did some of your friends experience, or family members that you may know experience in their coming out process? And was it something difficult for you to do, or and can you kind of tell like maybe your
Yeah.
story of how you've done it?
Yeah, it's, if I may, you know, we all belong to a moment in time, you know, in different eras, and people's beliefs have developed and adapted and changed over time. We have different language we use now to refer to different types of gender identity and expression, for example. So, you know, my experience certainly is typical in some ways for, you know, what I'll call a traditional gay male who was 61 years old and came out when I came out. And, you know, the conditions changed. Like, I didn't feel comfortable coming out to everyone until later in life, in my mid to late 20s, because, you know, I was on a career path in an industry where, you know, sort of cisgender straight males had a certain perception about gay men not being able to do certain things or not wanting them to advance in a certain way. And I didn't really feel comfortable embracing or expressing my full identity until later, after I had achieved a certain level of success. You know, so there was that. But, you know, everybody's journey is different. And while I think that my experience was maybe typical for someone my age and stage, it's very different now, because of the ability to communicate has been multiplied by social media, and it's you know, everything you do now can be sort of watched and evaluated and shared and amplified. And it wasn't like that when I was growing up. So I can't speak to the level of pressure that youth is facing now, as they try to come out or express who they are, because it can really sort of get out there so quickly that it can be hard to contain or manage. So, you know, for me, it wasn't a negative experience necessarily. My parents were cool with it. My close friends were cool with it. And I came from a background where my dad was very, very fervently Catholic. but he, you know, believed in the aspect of Catholicism and Christianity that was love thy neighbor and make space for people. So I feel very fortunate. You know, if you look at what the Mass Commission on Youth is saying in their latest report, for example, you know, this is a mental health care crisis we're dealing with in terms of kids coming out now. And all you need to really know, if I had to highlight just one aspect of that report for people to take away, it's that 50% of queer and trans youth in Massachusetts seriously considered killing themselves last year. That's how bad it is for youth in their coming out journey right now. 50% of our youth and trans youth in Massachusetts wanted to kill themselves last year because of how society perceives them and the pressure that they feel. So this is a crisis. I'm not in a great position to speak to it now because I've lived a full life. But if you're at the beginning of your coming out journey, you are struggling. I don't know, David, if that's consistent with what you know.
I'm from Texas originally, so I'm 40, and my experience was, I guess, what you could imagine it would be for somebody from Texas. I know a lot of people have stereotypes about the state, and it is a very unsafe place at this moment for queer people. People are leaving in droves. Drag queens are leaving. Trans people are leaving. The governor there is doubling down on his anti-trans rhetoric, on his anti-queer rhetoric, and his anti-immigration rhetoric. While we're talking on this topic, people are leaving. They're out, and interestingly, Maura Healey put some I didn't know this because I'm a community organizer and I work across the state, and I didn't know that this happened, but apparently she put up some signs in Texas saying you are welcome in Massachusetts. So that was really interesting to me, but on a planning level I was like, why are we not getting the memo? Because we need to get ready for the people who are coming. But I thought it was a beautiful thing. But my experience was, you know, very much you're a sinner, you're this, you're that. And the thing about, I was lucky because I never believed that about myself. I am somebody who comes from a poverty background, so like I had a lot of other stuff to worry about. For being queer for me was like, it wasn't, I didn't internalize the hate. I never felt that way. I received the messaging, but I never internalized it. And I have lots of friends who they did. You know, my first partner was Mexican American, he was from Mexico, and his parents, I mean, it was bad, you know, and he struggled and with his mental health, and it led to addiction and all these different things. And I think that's what, again, going back to that conversation, Nicole, that you were saying, you know, it is your problem. It is their problem. I don't think they sometimes understand the depth of the consequences of their actions. Because, you know, that led to this person who was a successful chemical engineer, you know, becoming addicted because of the shame that they had around, and not being able to just talk to your family about it. So, you know, that it really took a toll on him and a lot of other people, and this happens everywhere. And to Kerry's point, you know, I think right now it is really important for us to focus on queer youth and make sure that they feel safe, because the messaging that they're getting from, you know, the political atmosphere, they have access to that. They have social media, they see it. So they see the laws that are being written. They see all these queer laws. There are like 527 right now. They see all of that and they're like, well, where's my place in this, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you're a young trans person and you can see that you're being gunned for no reason, you're just there, you know, of course it's going to be hard for you to want to have a successful life and a healthy life. And I think when it comes to this moment in history, it is really important that we protect trans people right now, because they're having their moment that we had during Stonewall, that, you know, and as a result of the progress, they're also receiving a ton of backlash. So it's really important for LGBTQ people and allies to come together and sort of protect them, you know, because and that's a debate within the community. Not everybody feels that way.
Agreed. Yeah, I know a lot of instances where people are turning to substance abuse behind this, and which is really sad because it's ultimately ruining their life, right? Just for
and homelessness and
absolutely
and
being
you know,
turned away.
once you get to that level of despair, it is very, very difficult to get out of it. And so much of, the activities of my organization and a lot of organizations like ours is about prevention, and it's about early intervention, and you've got to try to set a good foundation early before it's too late, because the consequences are deadly, and literally deadly. And I would just add one more thing, Nicole, if I may, this because you referenced and David has referenced the Stonewall riots, which were what, 54, 55 years ago. And it speaks to the older generation. Like when we look at it as, again, we're a small organization. The network is a smallish organization. It's mostly volunteer driven, grant funded, all that. We don't have a huge budget. Most of us have other jobs. And so what we do is we've got like basically three buckets. There's the youth group that we're talking about, so sort of early in the process. There's the trans community, which is under attack and really the most traumatized in many ways in our world. And then there's the older generation, right? The people who were there during the Stonewall riots, many of whom, not all, but many of whom have gone back into the closet. Can you imagine being re-traumatized? You were a pioneer 55 plus years ago. You put it all on the line just so that you could create an atmosphere of equal rights for everybody. Now you're faced with a situation where your mental acuity may be diminishing, your physical abilities may be diminishing, and you may not have family who support or accept you. You're afraid to get you can't get appropriate health care because you're afraid to say you're gay to your doctor. I mean, there's so many horrible stories, but you're in a nursing home and you don't tell them that you're gay, and you don't have your friends visit you because you are vulnerable. You're in a vulnerable congregate setting, and you don't want people to know that you're gay because you're afraid of what might happen. So a lot of older LGBTQ plus people are literally going back into the closet 55 years after they came out. And it's a level of sadness that is really hard to express.
There's
go ahead, David.
There's a severe isolation with this group that Terry is talking about. So folks between the ages of, I would say, 50 to 80 or plus, that group is extremely isolated. You have to think about the fact that there was no acceptance during their youth. So oftentimes people get stuck in that environment. Then they lived through the AIDS crisis. And they lost a ton of the people that they loved. They became nurses. They became their friends' caretakers. They then lost them, which that trauma within itself is so impactful. And a lot of folks have not ever recovered from that. So you get stuck in a place. And although we feel like, and maybe I do, at my age, that we've progressed and we have all this, we have a lot of new gender identities, all these things, wonderful. And the kids are, on a different level. But that generation has been really left behind in a way, and people don't understand the situation that they're in, because it's just something that gets lost in translation of all this political talk that's happening. They're there and they're stuck and they're isolated oftentimes. And thank God, like Boston and Providence, I think it's Rumford, Massachusetts, there are 2 LGBTQ senior housing facilities that are going up now.
Wow. This is all very interesting, because I thought there was so much headway being made, but this is
hey, happy Pride, everybody. Pride masks
right.
a lot
and you just don't know. And that's why these discussions are so important, because the things that you guys are telling me, I'm like, whoa, I didn't even realize so much was still going on. I thought we were making progress, but there's work to do. So I want to go back to something that Kerry, you said, and then David, that you said. How do you guys deal with the stereotyping? Sexually promiscuous, you're pedophiles, you spread STDs, all of these labels. How do you deal with that? What do you want to tell people? Because people are just, ignorant, the ignorance. Whoever wants to go first.
I don't know. Listen, some people just, they don't want to have their minds changed. And you're not going to change their minds, no matter how many reports you put in front of them, or how many allies you have stand next to you to support you, or it's some people are just going to hold those beliefs and not let go of them. So, I think the opportunity is identifying allies and in keeping the conversation going exactly like we're doing here, thanks to you, Nicole, and your organization, and to, keep putting positivity out there. We're attacked every single day on social media. I mean, drag queen story hours is just part of it. But it's, our strategy and our belief is that if you expose people to the beautifully human in all of us, eventually people will come around. So, for us, it's literally about changing minds almost one at a time. That one, it sounds silly, but that one person who wanted the pink frisbee, it's like that, those are moments. There are great moments from Pride that we take away where, my niece, who's straight and in a relationship, heterosexual relationship, wanted to take her boyfriend to the after party, the Pride after party. They brought along friends and other friends, and it became this wonderful mix of gay, straight sort of celebration of humanity. And it was just a little moment in time, and there were only 20 people at the party, where there were drag queens doing lip syncing and death drops and whatnot. But it was a moment where people's minds were maybe changed a little bit. So I see my role as trying to create more moments and more opportunities like that, and intersperse that with conversations about statistics and demographic changes and mass youth reporting and Maura Healey's efforts to do XYZ, and David having something in September, and so that's all we can do, is put the positive out there and invite you to come into our world and understand us and be part of it. We're not going to change people's minds if those minds don't want to be changed.
David, did you want to add something?
Yeah, as being a Pride organizer is a very rewarding thing to do. It is. I'm very proud and happy to be a part of it, and it's been the most fulfilling thing that I've done with my work. I like work with a lot of queer people and across the state with my work, my nonprofit organization that I work for, and we're connected with Boston Pride, and I'm friends with people at Providence Pride. The best thing you can do, I think, is respond to all of that criticism. I mean, because the Sutton incident that I mentioned before went from, oh, there's a drag queen at the school, to she's a pedophile, or this person under the drag is a pedophile, and it went straight to that, which was
Stay away
really
from our kids.
Yeah, disheartening, very disheartening for the person, the individual, the friend that we know, and his mom, who was concerned for his safety. But also, he is a drag queen. He realizes that's part of his role, and that he has to do this advocacy work. So there's like a community understanding that we have, that we know that we have to do this work together. So I don't think that those outside forces are going to necessarily win, although they are terrifying. But I think the best thing you can do as a Pride organization, we partner with Edward M. Kennedy, who provides gender affirming care. We partner with the senior housing folks to get LGBTQ people, seniors housed, because that's a major issue. Fundraising, like, these are the things that you can do to support your community. And I've seen in Worcester a culture shift. So I can attest to the work that's being done on a bigger level, that it's actually working, and it's really something to be happy about. That noise, it can be depressing. It can get into your psyche, but at the same time, you see, like, there's also a response to that. Boston Pride this weekend just happened, and it was big, it was beautiful, it was all these things, and Pride does matter in that way, because it provides a focal point for a community. And if your Pride can set the example by partnering with the right organizations and making sure that you're protecting your community. We work with AIDS Project Worcester. We work with the LGBT Commission on Youth. We do everything we can to make sure that people know that there are resources available for them, despite what they might see.
Yeah, that's great. And David's making a really important point, Nicole, that Pride is sort of you know, here we are in the middle of the big celebration of everything that's great about the community, but it's the other 11 months of the year where all these partnerships are being developed and all these programs and services are being provided, and hopefully all these minds are being changed. And that's where the work lands. It's got to land somewhere beyond the slogans and the parties. And that's really the important work that we're doing here.
Yeah. My role in Nonotuck, I'm the placement specialist. So I am the one that places individuals that we serve into homes. And when I am vetting providers, you know, we talk about the type of person that's a fit for the home. And one of the questions is like, well, how do you feel about supporting someone who may be transgender or homosexual, right? And what I've come into encounter with some people is they're like, well, I'm religious and I don't know how that fits into the home. So how do you think, and maybe you guys can help me out a little bit, like how can we build a better atmosphere of inclusion, just regardless of people's personal or like religious beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the question? I mean, there's almost no answer to some of these questions in a way. I mean, and I don't mean that in any way to sound like it's despair or that we're giving up. It's again, you know, you can only show you know, I look at our role here as wanting to show all the best of humanity and all the variety and all the diversity and all the really cool things that make up a society and a place and a humanity. And yeah, there's dark sides to that. And yeah, there are some pedophiles who are trans, just like there are pedophiles who are straight white people. Like they exist, but the you know the demonization of our community and the hyperbole and the exaggeration and the projection that goes on to try to put all of this deviant behavior onto us is not fair and it's not accurate. So again, if you're willing to have that conversation,
Right.
we can have the conversation. If you're not, and the narrow part of your religion that seems to imply that homosexuality is bad for some reason, if that's what you really believe, I don't know that I can change your mind. But, you know, there are others within religious communities. Again, I can only speak for Catholicism. That's how I was raised. My dad, who was the most religious person you will ever meet, chose to believe in other parts of the Bible that talked about acceptance and loving and serving the poor. Like that was his, you know, sort of take on religion that he chose to espouse. And I was raised in that atmosphere. He didn't even blink when I came out. Didn't even blink. So, you know, I think, you know, the goal is to try to partner with people who want to be true partners and just try to, you know, live with the people who don't really want their minds to be changed.
Thank you. David, did you want to add anything?
So the question is on religion, correct? I just want to make sure I understand correct.
Yep.
Okay. I think that you know, with your work that you described, you know, if you detect that, then I would avoid placing anybody in that environment because it's already hard enough to be them. So you know, to find people who are loving whatever religion they may be, I think ultimately it's about love. And if you're vetting people and you're vetting partnerships and things like that, that's what you're looking for. And there's a lot of that out there as well. You know, I do think that the religious fear component it's still there, but it's not as loud as it used to be. I know that here in Worcester, for example, we had a prominent bishop who used to write really terrible things about the community, and he would write like all this, you know, doctrine on why it was wrong to be queer, why it was wrong to be trans. When we did the LGBTQ History Project in Worcester in 2019, he wrote a huge article blasting everybody who participated in that, from the scholars who participated to the community members to the activists, blah, blah, blah. And what I noticed over the years being here, I've been here for 10 years, that used to be a really big voice. And people would be very subservient to that voice. They would kind of play it off like, oh, that's just how he is, and et cetera, you know, blah, blah, blah. But over the years, I've seen the community push back on that. And they've really stood up against it. So now when he does things like that, and he still does, the community, the city of Worcester will throw up a pride flag. The library will throw up a pride flag. This is the sort of change that I've seen happen in the community, and it's a really great thing. So I try to focus on that. And you know, working with AIDS Project Worcester, we have a youth housing program for LGBTQ youth who may be unhoused, and we have another program called Safe Homes. And we just really try to focus on getting kids the resources that they need if they are ousted or abandoned by their families. And that goes back to that conversation that we had earlier about, you know, you are responsible for your actions, straight people, when you do these things. And it can't be turned back around on us when we're trying to really protect our own community. You know, it takes a lot of emotional labor to do that work and to protect people who are in those situations. And it's a very difficult thing to deal with. So I think that, you know, that fear-driven response is really unfortunate, and it's sad. And I'm glad that I don't have to live in that world. It seems like a very difficult place to live.
If I can just add one thing on top of that,
Yeah.
you know, again, and it's funny too, because, you know, we are in this, in most of this conversation, you know, reacting to what is really 20% of the population's beliefs, you know, based on all the most recent polls. Literally one that just came out, LA Times just did one. And 80% of the American public says they either somewhat or strongly approve of gay and lesbian people living as they wish. So LGBTQ plus people have broad support. You know, I think, again, this phenomenon of it's the 10 to 20%, the 10%, the minorities who have social media to amplify their voice in a political climate where, you know, their words are taken and promoted for headlines and profit and clicks. They get an outsized portion of the attention. You know, we spend a lot of time trying to change the minds of 10% of people whose minds will never change. So I have to keep reminding myself that despite all the doom and gloom, and it's real, there are 527 bills making their way through the legislatures all across the country right now. But you know what? One of them, a big one in Florida, one of Ron DeSantis's signature, you know, sort of book banning anti-LGBTQ plus pieces of legislation was just struck down. Little pieces, little pockets of positivity and little rays of light. This is the cycle that we're in right now, where and again, mostly trans, where we're under attack, but we're hoping to come out the other side of it by keeping on, you know, and doing what we're doing to try to change hearts and minds.
Absolutely. Thank you. David, I didn't get what your how you identify, because I see Kerry's he, him, his.
Okay. Yeah, he, him, but I guess I identify as queer, if that's the question too. And I like that, and that's a very charged word.
It is. It was for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I understand both sides of the argument on the word, and you have to be very careful working with LGBTQ elders. Oftentimes that word is unacceptable. They don't want to hear it because it's been weaponized. For me, it's more of an umbrella term to say, like, there's a lot there that I don't really necessarily have to explain because there's, once you get into the, I guess, identity politics and all that stuff, it can be very convoluted and confusing for people who aren't in the culture.
Yeah, because that's what I was I was thinking that, because I'm like, why is identity so important? Like, you know, like you said, queer, and and you see these videos or instances of people like, no, I'm this, and I get it, but I don't get it, right? So
Yeah.
like you're saying, you're like,
Yeah.
it's convoluted.
And
So it is,
yeah.
I guess you're right. If you're not in the community, it's probably something that we just
And
won't get.
there's
Yeah, I
internal
had the same
debate.
question too, because I kept hearing the word and I'm like, are we like not supposed to be saying
you
that
know,
word?
David, it's funny, isn't it? Because, and I mean, it's like we were saying earlier too, is how language evolves, perceptions change over time. We are growing as a society, and
Yep.
we're adapting as society adapts. And for me, being queer was like, that's calling me a fag. Like that's
Right.
like
Okay.
that don't do that. Like but over time, and as I've started to spend more time in the community, even at my age, 61 years old, I've started to, I mean, I don't know if I would call myself queer now, but I don't run away from it. I'm not offended by it. I've evolved as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, because as David is saying, or seems to be saying, is like, people don't fit in boxes, A, and B, the boxes grow, contract, evolve over time. The message here is only you get to decide what you are. Only you. And the problem is other people want to define you. And so the minute someone tries to tell you who you are, what you should eat, what you should wear, all those, people are gonna resist. People are gonna stiffen up. So this is all about getting people to just accept your definition of yourself, not accept theirs.
Can I say something really quickly?
Yeah.
And then I want to open up because we have a few minutes left for questions.
Oh, sure.
So I thought that part was very important, right? Because I was getting ready to say, hey, gentlemen, da 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 da. But see, I didn't want to offend, because you might be like, don't call me a gentleman. That's not how I identify. So I was like, no. I need to ask and make sure that what I'm saying is appropriate, because it is touchy for some people, and some people not. I've met people and they're like, hey, listen, however you see me is what you identify me as, right? So if you're looking at me and you think I'm a she, then I'm cool with that. If you look at me, you think I'm a he, I'm cool with that. So you guys were great. I just want to say, so much information. I really appreciate you on behalf of DEI and B committee. We are thankful for all of the information and you guys being open to even speaking with us. If there's anybody who has any questions, if you want to raise your hand or type it in the chat, that is fine. Rob, I don't know if you're still out here to help me get some of those questions out.
Yeah, please. Love to hear what you
Questions,
all think.
comments.
I see Janelle's hands up.
Yes,
okay, Janelle.
Hi, this was really incredible. So I just want to start by saying thank you for being here. And thank you, Nicole, for facilitating on behalf of our DEI and B committee. And I just also want to thank you for the work that you're doing specifically as Pride organizers. I am a cis heterosexual white woman, and when I was a teenager, knew that's who I was, and had a really pivotal point in my life where I was on a service trip in Vancouver, and we ended up at Vancouver Pride, which as a 15-year-old, it's out of this world. It's unbelievable. If people haven't, gotten to experience it or seen videos of it or anything. And what was so life-changing to me about it is I've never seen such a celebration of life.
Yes.
I had never seen such a celebration of life before.
Yes.
And so Pride has always had this special place in my heart, as a straight woman, but I've always just adored it so much for that. And I've been really, really lucky in my life that I have been welcomed into community spaces as an ally and felt really accepted in places. And so as now a parent to 2 young children, I've made it a point to bring my children to Pride. We didn't make it yet this year, but we went last year to Berkshire Pride, because I want them to see that celebration of life and to feel that welcoming, and to know that that place exists you know, no matter where their lives lead and the, you know, how they end up identifying in the future. And so I just want to thank you for continuing to create those spaces for people in the LGBTQIA community, and for those of us who adore people in the LGBTQIA community and who just get to witness that celebration of life, because that's really, really how I see it. So I just thank you so much for that. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I think I'm just gonna leave it there and just say thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm a little emotional that you said that, because I didn't really it kind of hitting me when you're saying it. It's just kind of hitting me that's what it's about. And yeah, Pride isn't a celebration of the gay community. Pride is a celebration of life.
Yeah.
And to see all the people affected as they were, and it's just kind of hitting me right now, because we spent so much time doing this, and when you see it all come together and when you see someone acknowledge the work, it means a lot. So Janelle, thank you for saying that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, don't apologize. Thank you. Thank you.
you.
Please don't apologize. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just at Worcester Pride, and we're having it on September 7th. I put a video in the chat so you could just kind of see what it is. It is a huge celebration of life and humanity, and it's a beautiful thing. And as an organizer, it's really hard because you do create this space, but the resistance that you get on the outside is a lot oftentimes, and people don't understand that, and that's okay, because you're kind of chosen to do this work. It's like part of your personal mission or your calling. I just landed in that position, and now I'm okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. But the LGBTQ community is a very complex community. It is a traumatized community, so people don't understand oftentimes how it kind of works, I think, and there's a lot of misinformation on this. But I'll tell you, like in Worcester, when we first started changing things up and celebrating like a wider diversity, we got pushback from people who were from here, and it's harder when you're not from a community, or it's when you're within the community and you can't see the outside. But being from Houston and coming into Worcester 10 years ago and seeing the dynamic, and understanding that it was a very there was something almost stuck, and we started to push it a little bit, and people said, they told us it would never work. Like, I mean, there were drag queens who said, this is never going to work in Worcester. You're never going to be able to do this. And then 4 years later, you have this huge celebration. It's a big festival. It has really changed the morale of the queer people in the community. And that's what's most important about the work, I think, is that people can now have a place that's in their own community.
Yeah.
And they can see this, and they can say like, oh, no, this is actually Worcester. It is bigger than I could have ever imagined. And this, for the first time ever, the city of Worcester is really sponsoring Pride. There used to be a lot of pushback to it because of the conservatism in the city. Yeah. And it's just changed. I mean, it's changed the morale. It has created a ripple effect. And if you can keep Pride as a core strength of your community, it really has a lot of ripple effects in terms of the benefits that it does for the community.
That's a great way to put it.
So I'm really happy with that. Yeah, and I get like you, I get very, like, on the day of Pride, I look at the audience and there's a huge crowd out there, and they're just dancing and they're having fun, and there's just like so many hugs, and people are just, they have the energy. There's like a Pride spirit that you can't describe. And I always get like, I always take a step back and just like, oh wow, this is really important.
Yeah.
Yep,
People
I
who
agree.
are resistant are missing out. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I agree. I was
Thank you
telling
for
them the Pride Parade, the Springfield's
Appreciate
first
that.
annual Pride Parade. I went last year, and I mean,
Yeah,
the love and the
What's not to like?
people, and I was out there for
Just-
hours, the parade, like
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave. It was such a great event, and just to see everyone come together and everyone be very supportive, and just the love, it's amazing. So if you haven't got out to Pride, make sure you get to Pride. David's
There's a
Pride
million
is
of
in
them,
September.
and they're all great in their own way. Yep.
Hi, I'm Vivette. I couldn't figure out how to put my hands up.
Okay.
And I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing about the struggle and the hope. And I want to add one thing. My daughter goes to a public school, and each year at her school around this year, they have an event where they really talk about all this challenge, and she's the one who's educating me. Because seriously, when I come from, I didn't know, and I used to be someone who was like really prejudicial, like not prejudicial, but having an opinion. Because when we grew up in Africa, we didn't see that, and we realized that most of the kids who were from poor family, a way to get help and get an education was to, and what we were educated is like, okay, it's the people from colonization who brought it, and they make it to subject other people. They were explaining us to us, and that's how I grew up. My daughter is now educating me because they have been having all that event at school, and sometimes she invite me and I can go and see, and I say, what is this? I was like, oh, this is a flag for this. This is a, I'm like, oh, I didn't even understand, you know?
I love
So
that.
I think that there's hope, like the struggle is still there, but we still have hope because we have to keep on educating people. I'm the one who changed my mind, because when I came away from Africa, I was like, oh no, I don't understand this. We don't know, people are suffering because they're poor. That's why they have to sell their soul to the devil, blah, blah. But now I already changed, and I have a co-worker that I work with, and I just saw the kindness and the goodness in him. And I'm like, oh, they're not different from me, you know, there's a human being. So I'm glad that we can all celebrate our humanity in a different way and have an understanding. And I just understand there's good people everywhere, there's bad people everywhere. So you just have to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
For sharing that. That was great.
I have a story with my son when he was around 5-6 years old. We were going through a drive-through, and the guy at the window, he was wearing makeup. And I guess it was the first time my son saw it. And he said, Mommy, was that guy wearing makeup? And I said, yeah, I think he was. And he said, oh, okay. And then I said, why? I said, oh, nothing. It just looks cool. And then I said, do you want to wear makeup? Because it's, you know, I'm also learning a lot and learning about the conversations. And, you know, if my son was part of the community, I wanted him to feel comfortable, you know, talking to me about it. So I asked him, you know, would you like to wear makeup? Is that why you were asking? And he said, no, that's not my style, but I think it's pretty cool that he's wearing it. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then we drove off, and that was it. That was the conversation. And I think it's just beautiful how children don't have those
exactly.
stereotypes, those,
yes.
So I just wanted to share that because it was definitely a learning moment for me with my little 5-6-year-old. I can't remember. He's 15 now.
There you go.
Yeah, he's a teenager now.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, guys, it's a little after 2. So I'd like to thank everyone who was able to come out today. Your attendance is greatly appreciated. Kerry and David, thank you so much.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Appreciate
really.
you. And we would love to have you guys. I have so many more questions now.
Anytime.
David, lovely to meet you too.
Even more questions.
You
This
as
is
well.
great conversation. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Let's do it
Take
again
care.
soon. Happy Pride,
Yes.
everybody.
Thank you.
Happy Pride.
Pride.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Rob, we're good?